take a video of these kids.
Oh my
But
God,
they're children, I know.
How stalkery of
I
you.
know, and I was like zooming in.
The afternoon sun fell like liquid gold through the ancient trees lining the winding drive that led to Lorenza Castle. A quiet stronghold of stone and memory nestled in the poetic stillness of the Scottish coast. The air was fresh and alive, carrying with it the faint salt of the nearby sea mixed with the earthy scent of moss, rain, and grass. The landscape looked as though it had been painted by centuries of wind and time, rugged, timeless, and beautiful in that quiet, melancholy way unique to Scotland. Sam Heughan sat at the wheel of his car, the soft hum of the engine barely audible over the sound of the wind brushing through the trees. He glanced sideways at the woman beside him, Dakota Johnson, whose gray-green eyes reflected both excitement and quiet thought. She said little, her hands folded in her lap, but there was a tenderness in her expression that spoke volumes. She was used to the world watching her, used to lights and cameras, but this was different. This wasn't another interview, another performance, another script. This was real. This was the moment she would meet the man who had raised the man she loved, the father whose approval meant everything to him. "You all right?" Sam asked softly, one hand leaving the steering wheel to find hers. His voice carried that gentle, lyrical quality that came naturally to him, a softness born from both his upbringing and the quiet confidence of someone who had learned to speak from the heart. Dakota nodded, her lips curling into a small, nervous smile. "I'm fine," she said. It's the first time I'll be meeting the man you've spoken about with so much respect. I don't want to disappoint him." Sam's fingers tightened slightly around hers, reassuring. "You won't," he said, his eyes warm as the fading light. "You're the first person who's ever made me think about marriage, Dakota. Trust me, he'll see that." As the car turned into the wide gravel courtyard, Lorenza Castle rose before them, a grand but weathered figure of stone and ivy. The setting sun caught the moss-covered walls, making them glow as though the castle itself were alive with memory. Standing before the heavy oak door was a tall, silver-haired man in a thick ash-gray sweater, his hands tucked casually into his pockets. The moment felt suspended in air, past and future meeting in the amber light. "That's my father," Sam whispered, his voice low, reverent, almost boyish. "Malcolm Heughan." He stepped out, walked quickly around the car, and opened Dakota's door. She took a deep breath before stepping out, the heels of her shoes touching the cool stone like a quiet promise. Malcolm's gaze met hers as they approached, eyes the same deep shade of blue as his son's, sharp yet not unkind. He carried himself like a man who had lived through both hardship and beauty, the kind of strength that comes from weathering storms and still finding grace in them. "Dad," Sam said with quiet pride, "this is Dakota Johnson." There was a pause, one of those moments when everything seems to hold its breath. Dakota bowed her head slightly, offering her hand. "Hello, sir. It's a pleasure to meet you." Malcolm nodded, taking her hand with firm politeness, the corners of his mouth lifting faintly. "Hello, son," he said to Sam before turning back to her. "Finally, this boy's brought someone home. I was beginning to think he'd forgotten what family means." The remark, delivered in his dry Scottish humor, eased the air instantly. Dakota laughed softly, grateful for the warmth in his tone. "Come in," Malcolm said, gesturing toward the door. "It's getting cold out here." The great hall of Lorenza Castle was like stepping into another century. High oak beams stretched across the ceiling. The walls were lined with portraits of ancestors, stern men and graceful women who seemed to watch over the present with ghostly dignity. The air carried the faint scent of old wood, peat smoke, and history. A great stone fireplace burned in the parlor, its flames casting amber reflections on the glass cabinet filled with old whiskey bottles, each a relic of a generation past. Malcolm motioned for them to sit. He settled himself into an armchair by the fire, the kind of chair that seemed to have shaped itself to his frame over decades. Sam and Dakota sat together on the worn leather sofa opposite, close enough that their shoulders touched. The silence that followed was thick but not uncomfortable. Only the crackling of the fire and the rhythmic ticking of a grandfather clock filled the room. "So," Malcolm began, his voice deep, deliberate. "You work in film." Dakota smiled politely. "Yes, sir. A fine career," he said. "Demanding, unforgiving." His gaze moved to her more closely. "But are you ready to be part of this family? It's not an easy thing, being tied to a man who belongs half to the world and half to the land that raised him." His tone was not unkind, but it carried the weight of experience. Dakota took a breath, steady but respectful. "I understand, sir. I know what the Heughan name means here, its history, its responsibility. I also know that love isn't just about admiration, but about endurance. I'm ready for that." Malcolm studied her for a long moment, then gave a small nod, a glint of approval flickering in his eyes. "Sam has told me much about you," he said, "but I like to see things for myself. I've seen him go through life always moving, never staying, never settling. He's his mother's son that way. Restless, full of stories, always chasing something he can't quite name." He turned to his son. "You once told me commitment wasn't your thing." Sam chuckled, the firelight playing across his face. "I did," he admitted, "but I hadn't met someone I didn't want to leave, even for a day." Malcolm leaned back, the faintest hint of a smile touching his lips. "A fair answer," he said quietly. "But love isn't all sunlight and poetry. Boy, it's early mornings when she's angry and you don't know why. It's evenings when you sit across from each other in silence, and you've got to choose every time to stay." Dakota looked at the older man, her expression softening. "We've disagreed," she said honestly. "Sometimes about small things, sometimes about bigger ones. But what I've learned with Sam is that love isn't about avoiding conflict. It's about how you come back from it. We argue, yes, but we listen. We make space for each other's storms." Malcolm's frown eased slightly, the corners of his mouth twitching upward. "Good answer," he murmured. "Because marriage, my dear, is not made of grand gestures. It's made of the quiet decisions you make when no one is watching." For a while, no one spoke. The fire crackled, shadows shifting against the walls. A portrait above the fireplace caught Dakota's eye, an older woman with auburn hair and kind eyes. "Your mother?" she asked softly. Malcolm nodded. She passed years ago, but she would have liked you." There was a pause, one that carried both warmth and memory. Sam reached for Dakota's hand, his thumb brushing over her skin gently. "She taught me everything I know about love," he said. "She used to say that love's not about possession, it's about presence." Dakota smiled faintly. "That's beautiful." Malcolm's gaze softened as he looked at the two of them together, their hands entwined, their eyes reflecting the same light from the fire. "You remind me of your mother and me, boy," he said quietly. "Two stubborn souls who somehow found harmony." He leaned forward, pouring 3 small glasses of whiskey from the cabinet, the amber liquid glowing like captured firelight. "A proper Scottish welcome," he said, handing one to each of them. They raised their glasses, and for a moment, generations seemed to merge. The past, the present, and the future, all bound by that simple act of shared warmth. Dakota looked around the room, absorbing the weight of history that lived in every stone, every framed photograph, every whisper of the wind outside. She realized that this wasn't just a house. It was an inheritance, a living testament to endurance and love. "It's beautiful here," she said softly. "It feels eternal." Malcolm nodded slowly. Castles outlast people, but it's people who give them meaning. Just remember that, both of you, build something that'll last, not just in walls, but in hearts." As evening fell and the fire dimmed to embers, conversation flowed more easily. They spoke of films, of Scotland, of life away from the public eye. Malcolm shared stories from his youth, and Dakota laughed more freely, her earlier nervousness melting into genuine affection. At one point, Sam watched the two of them speak, his father and the woman he loved, and felt an unfamiliar warmth spread through him. It wasn't pride, exactly. It was peace. When they finally stood to leave, Malcolm walked them to the door. The night air was crisp, the moon a pale silver coin hanging above the hills. You've chosen well, Malcolm said to his son quietly. Don't lose her.
Sam smiled.
I won't. Then Malcolm turned to Dakota, his eyes soft but serious. Take care of him. He's strong, but sometimes strength hides loneliness. Don't let him hide too long.
We drank a little giggle poison.
You
are doing amazing. We're
In what way do you...
Sam tightened his grip around Dakota's hand as if to anchor the moment in eternity. His voice low but steady as he said, I've already chosen. Malcolm, standing near the antique liquor cabinet, regarded them both with quiet affection before reaching for a bottle of 18-year-old whiskey, its amber hue catching the glow of the fire. For truly special occasions, he murmured, his voice carrying the weight of memory and tradition. And today is one of them. He poured 3 glasses, the liquid swirling like captured sunlight, and handed one to each of them. Dakota chuckled softly, her nervousness dissolving. Does this mean I've passed the test? She teased, and Malcolm turned, a rare mischievous glint in his eyes. You've passed with your heart, my dear. The rest is mere formality. Their glasses touched with a gentle chime, a fragile, resonant sound that seemed to seal something beyond words. For Sam, for Dakota, Malcolm said solemnly, and for what truly matters, not fame, not tradition, but faith. The sound of the clinking crystal lingered in the air like a promise whispered into time. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the misty glass panes of Lorenza Castle, transforming the great hall into a dreamscape of gold and haze. Sam, still wearing a soft beige jumper, sat at the long oak table, a steaming cup of coffee in his hand, while Dakota bent over a cream-colored notebook, scribbling ideas for their wedding. What do you think of gray-blue for the main color? She asked thoughtfully, her fingers brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. It feels classic, grounded, like the castle, like Scotland. Sam raised an eyebrow with a grin. I thought you wanted blush pink, something cinematic. Dakota smiled, tilting her head. That was before. Now I want something that feels like us. A blend of old soul and quiet strength. Just then, Malcolm descended the staircase, holding a bundle of old papers tied with a ribbon. You might want to see your mother's wedding plans, he said, placing them before Dakota. She unfolded the yellowed pages as though they were relics, her eyes softening as she read the delicate handwriting in fading purple ink. Meticulous details about table arrangements, the folk band from Inverness, even the exact flower placement near the altar. She planned like a director, Malcolm said with a nostalgic chuckle. Dakota reached across the table and gently placed her hand over his. I wish I could have met her. She would have adored you, he replied, his voice tender. Then turning to Sam, he asked, will you keep the sword exchange? Sam laughed, glancing at Dakota. I was going to ask you, if you still have the sword, I think we should. Dakota's eyes widened with curiosity. Sword exchange. Sam's voice softened as he explained, it's an old